Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are Teach the Shoah. Teach the Shoah's mission is to teach the Holocaust through story and to bring the stories of the Holocaust survivors and victims. Sorry, Deborah, can you take over? I have a siren.
Okay. So our mission is to make sure that the stories of Holocaust survivors and victims get passed on, and we do this in a number of different ways. One of the main ways we do it is through storytelling, but the other main way we do it is through commemorations like the one we're going to talk about today. So
just a quick aside.
Yes.
She had to leave because she is coming to us from Israel. And whenever a siren goes off, they have to go immediately to shelter. That's what happens. And hopefully she'll be back with us very soon.
Deborah, this is Erica. So I just wanted to let you know if you need me to step in on helping with the book talk, I'm here. So just let me know if you want me to step in.
Thank you, Erica. I also wanted to say, I know Erica is in California, and our thoughts are with the people in California, and we hope they know that we are community, and if they need anything from us, if you know anyone who needs something, we are there for them. We have storytellers and members of Teach the Shoah community who are in California and the LA area, and we are thinking of them, as we are, of course, thinking of the folks in Israel, like Lynn. Hopefully everything's okay there. So Lynn had a whole plan for this, and what we were going to start with was a little bit of a history of the organization. Teach the Shoah started in, it started in 2015 when Violet and I went to Israel to a class at Yad Vashem about how to teach the Holocaust. We did this because the community, the congregation that we belong to, Congregation Kolami in North Texas, has a great Sunday school and great teachers and an amazing rabbi. And we kind of had the sense that they didn't really have a good sense of how to teach the Holocaust. It wasn't being taught. And we went to Yad Vashem and discovered that they had a new way of thinking about the Holocaust that was completely different from anything we had thought about before. And really what it was looking at the story from the perspective of individuals, and especially from the perspective of Jewish stories. And we realized, I mean, it was kind of a shock to recognize how much of the story we had been telling from the Nazi perspective. And that realization blew us away. We came back and decided that everybody had to know this. Violet, you have thoughts about that?
I was just, as you were saying, I was remembering the excitement in those classes. And one of our teachers, Leah
Boszkowski.
when she made the comment, they left us in the camps. When we were talking about survivors, all the stories that were being taught were of the horror, the fear, the deprivation. Nothing was being told about the next day. What happened after? And I had to sit and think about that because she was so right.
Also, things were not being taught about the strength and the resilience
yes.
during the war itself. And
yes.
that was a revelation to us. So we went with the intention of bringing back curriculum for the Sunday school. But as part of that, and this is where we get to the story of the rituals and the books and the book that we're talking about today, we wanted a program for Yom HaShoah. And we had all these ideas for the curriculum, and we were trying to figure out what to do for Yom HaShoah. And I was talking to my husband, Michael, and Leah had commented, we are still writing the Haggadah of the Holocaust. And by that, she meant the story. We are still figuring out how we're telling the story. I mean, the word Haggadah literally means the story. So I made this comment to Michael, and Michael said, well, why don't you? So we did. We sat in the garden at the hotel in Yad Vashem on Shabbos morning in the middle of this class, and we wrote a Haggadah for the Holocaust. This is what turned into Light from the Darkness. That's the Jewish ritual that was published almost exactly 5 years ago in 2020. Violet, you want to tell us a little bit about how we went from that to this interfaith version?
We began to do the ritual and take it to the Jewish community. And it was lovely how it was, accepted and how people reacted to it, and everything was wonderful. Well, my husband is Baptist, and his congregation wanted to do a Passover. And I thought, well, I'm not a part of this. I don't do anything there. And they set everything out, and they said, oh, please, please, you must come. So I went with my husband to their Passover. And I sat and was polite and listened. And every once in a while, their pastor would say, is it right, Violet? Is it right, Miss Helms? And I'm going, this is your show. And after it was all over with, and he was thanking me for coming, I said, you realize that there was nothing you did tonight that was anything like the Passover Seder. Would you like me to tell you to bring something to your congregation? And he snapped up on it. Well, then I got a hold of Deborah. I told her what was going on, and I put together a program, and she was so kind to come and run the projector for me. Well, it was terrible. But it was very interesting because what we saw in this short period of time was the lack of true knowledge of anything that was going on, because I presented a story of the Jews, what happened to them, but who are they? And it was very successful. We had great feedback. And Deborah said, I didn't think about taking it to non-Jews. But once Deborah gets an idea, it will bubble, it will boil, it will simmer, and it will grow into something good. And that's how this came about. Moment of witness. And I was very excited about it all. Welcome back, Lynn.
Welcome back,
Thank
Lynn. Is
you.
everything
I'm
okay
sorry.
there?
Yes, well, we haven't heard that anything has happened anywhere apart from rocket exploding, but it's fine. We're fine. So thank you for taking over. I apologize for disappearing. So I kind of just got the tail end. I assume you've started talking about the birth of Moment of Witness.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
Well, we talked a little bit about the birth of Teach the Shoah and the Light from the Darkness and how it shifted to Moment of Witness. But we'll hand it back to you.
So, could you tell us a bit about your collaborative process in writing the rituals and creating it and making it what it is today?
So as we start to talk about this, we have to acknowledge our third partner. We have a silent partner in this, and that's my husband, Michael, who is an incredible editor. And he is part of this process. I mean, he's never been willing to have his name as an author on it, but he kind of should. So the way that this typically works is, and this is kind of true of a lot of things in Teach the Shoah, I come up with the structure and a first draft, and I send it to Violet and Michael. And Violet adds the poetry, the poetic wording, the beauty, and Michael adds the punch, that pithy way of saying something that really gets it across, and cuts out all the stuff that I had in there that isn't necessary. And then it comes back to me and we go back and forth that way a while. Violet, how do you see it?
Exactly. In fact, I remember us sitting in your kitchen and we were going over much drawn through pieces of paper, and you had asked me to write something, and I did. And Michael picked it up, looked at it, and said, "What if we get rid of this and you just use this paragraph?" It was like a light came on. It was perfect. It fit beautifully. So I just adore Michael and his gift with finding where the pith of stuff is wonderful. He's wonderful.
Yes, Michael's very good at finding the core. Violet
Yes.
is very good at adding poetic wording. I'm good at creating structure. It's a great collaboration, as Fran says.
The winning trio. So I'd like us to delve in a bit more into the actual content of the ritual of Moment of Witness. And one of the core elements, it seems, is the personal accounts. Why has this become the core element, or was this intentional? And if so, why?
So the personal accounts were the core element of everything from the beginning. I mean, this was in many ways the revelation that we had at Yad Vashem, was the recognition that if you taught this whole story through personal accounts, the story of the Holocaust, it broadened out a whole bunch of things. It broadened out how you saw the specifics, the resilience, the strength, that before, the after. It broadened out the nuance of different ways that people had of experiencing the Holocaust. And so from the beginning of what we were doing at Teach the Shoah, it was always about individual stories. So when we created the ritual, it was really important to us that we were hearing the voices of survivors and victims, of the people who had experienced it. Now, one of the other things that was really important to us was that these people were more than just quotes. So I can put in a quote, from us with Faith, Rivka Wagner. Okay, that's great. Who's Rivka Wagner, right? You don't know anything about her. And if all I give you is the quote, then she is reduced to this quote. So it was very important to us from the very beginning that anybody that we quoted, somewhere in the book, we talked about them. So at the end of the book, and do you want me to bring up this page? Lynn?
Yes,
I can
please
bring
do.
the page.
Please share with us.
So at the end of the book, we have, let me share my screen. We have a couple of pages that are the stories of everybody who is quoted in the book, or who's in at this point, whose artwork. So Berman House created the actual layout, this beautiful layout that I just love, and added all of the artwork in this book comes from survivors or victims, and either from the time or from shortly after. So the people who created those, their stories are in here too. And we have, when we get to memory, we have pictures of individuals whose names we recite when we're remembering, just as to have a few names to put out there, and their stories are in here too. That's very important, as are a little bit about the stories of the communities we mentioned. So we'll talk about this a little bit later, I think. But we have a place where we talk about communities. And so we wanted to make sure that the stories of those communities were in here too. That this gives the text some depth. So it's not just mentioning things, but you can go to the back of the book and really see who these people were.
Something that really resonated with me, and this is something that Teach the Shoah has put into action, and that's when you're telling about a person, say their name, but we take it a little further. We don't just say their name. We tell of their daily life. We tell of their connections. And this helps connect with the people that are listening to it. This is something that I believe we do very well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So another core element that comes out from the book are questions. Why were those questions important to be put into a book? I mean, these are questions that could have been in, in an attachment or just up on the website, but they're actually printed in the book.
So Light from the Darkness had discussion questions in it. If you had a teacher and who wanted to use it or something. But Moment of Witness, what made Moment of Witness special is what we call the Moment of Witness questions. And there's an interesting story behind these, because what happened with anything like this, a ritual or a remembrance, a ceremony, right? You have to try it out before you publish it, right? You have to beta test it, basically. So when we were trying to write the to write the interfaith version of the ritual, this was end of 2020, beginning of 2021. We held a series of online tests where we would run through the ritual with people who agreed to help us with it, and they would tell us what they thought. And being an interfaith thing, I pulled in non-Jewish friends and colleagues of mine. I asked other people to send me non-Jewish friends and colleagues. So this was mostly a non-Jewish audience, which is, what we were hoping for. At the second of those tests, one woman, an African-American woman, and I do not remember who it was, says, "This is really interesting, but I'm not seeing why I personally should care." And I thought, you're right. Nowhere in this am I telling you why it connects to you. I mean, the Jewish version, Light from the Darkness, the voice of we is the Jewish people, right? It's just like the Seder. We care because it happened to us. One of the things that we did in creating the interfaith version was we expanded the we. This was very important, that the we was not just Jews, but it was Jews and bystanders and rescuers, everybody who was involved. that was tricky to make sure that we could do that without losing the Jewish voice, but I think we managed. But we hadn't really given the wider community a reason to connect. And that's where the moment of witness questions were born. The moment of witness questions, and let me see if I can find one to bring up. This let me pull up the one that I think connects to people most strongly. The point of the moment of witness questions was to give people a chance to connect their experience and the experience of their community with what they were hearing. It's not about comparing trauma, it's about creating empathy by connecting your experience to what you're hearing. So this question here, what stories of hate and persecution have touched you? When we put this out into these rituals, and when we did this first in the test, this is one of the questions that I always want to put out there, because people are incredibly open about their experiences, about what they've seen and what they've experienced. Interestingly, and maybe not surprisingly, one of the things that we get a lot of is experiences from the LGBT community, and hate and prejudice that they've experienced. But people are incredibly open about what their experiences have been, and they start to see how their personal experiences kind of reflect what was going on, what the story that we're trying to tell here was.
So that actually leads me to the question of impact. How do you feel participants in the moment of witness ritual, how does the ritual impact them? What do they take home with them? Or what is your experience with your audiences? And
It
this is directed to
varies.
both of you.
Thank you. It varies, but it never fails. At the end of one session we were doing, after the class was over, I simply asked them, and now what? What will you do now with everything that you've heard? Some of them looked really surprised because it made them think that they were taking it with them. And they did have to remember it. Deborah, what have you run into?
Yes, and the call to action, and we can talk about the call to action too. But the moment of witness questions in particular draw people in. One of the things that we found early on with the ritual, with Light from the Darkness, was that it was very difficult to make it, when you were online, to make it participatory and not performative. And as a ritual, as a ceremony, it's meant to be participatory. I mean, it was written, the Light from the Darkness was basically written to be a Seder. I mean, not a Passover Seder, a Yom HaShoah Seder, but it was written to be interactive that way. And online, it can be difficult to draw that out. And the moment of witness questions have really allowed us to draw people in and make them part of the experience in a different kind of way. And I really have seen that when we've done it with these moment of witness questions, that we've had so much more engagement from the audience. I mean, when we do it performatively, you know, everybody says, "Oh, that was wonderful, that was wonderful." Yeah. When we do it this way, everybody feels connected in a totally different way. So this, and we've actually started using these kinds of questions in our Light from the Darkness rituals when we do them in April too, because they're such a good way of drawing, especially an online audience, into what you're doing.
Thank you so much for that. How do you feel that moment of witness blends in diverse audiences? Does it create a form of a community during the ritual itself?
I
Interesting
would say
question.
yes, it is, because following up, that comes right on the tail feathers of what Deborah had just said. Because after the people are asked these questions and they begin to answer, especially the one of what have you seen? What has happened around you? And they start going through everything and they tell us about this happened. I saw that happened. And it seems like once it's been said and it's out in the open, they can't put it back in the dark and they have to do something about it. So I think it's very effective.
So another question that I have, talking more about diverse communities and a more universal approach. Usually Holocaust remembrance events go around a specific event. So Yom HaShoah is always about uprising and resistance, because the date that was chosen was the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, and International Holocaust Remembrance is around the liberation of Auschwitz. But yet Moment of Witness does not focus on a single event. So Deborah, could you show us the content? Because I think that shows very well the different stages that
You want the, well,
Oh,
okay, let me show you. So you're not gonna be able to see this really well, but this is all the pages of Moment of Witness. This is what the inside of the book looks like. But I think what you're asking about here is the table of contents.
correct. So could you walk us through your choice of how you actually put the content together? And a sub question to that is, does this answer the universal questions of the Holocaust?
So the original idea was to tell the story. And Light from the Darkness actually was not the original version. There was a version before that we actually self-published, that was much more historical. And it had the same kind of structure as this. I think of it as a U shape. You start in the light. Light and darkness is sort of an introduction. It's candle lighting, that kind of stuff. But then you start with life before, and you walk your way down into the darkness, right? So troubles, this is the anti-Semitic laws, this is the ghettos, this is things getting worse. Hiding, having to send your children away. Terror, this is the bottom, right? Terror is where you talk about the camps and the mass murder and the killing pits and all those kinds of things, and the lost communities. But then you walk your way back up to the light, and you start with the light that existed within the darkness, the helpers and the strength of the individuals. So the people who stood up, the mostly non-Jews we're talking about, who stood up to help, and the strength of the Jews themselves. That's help and strength. And then you start to walk out of the darkness completely. You get to life. This is what life is the point where you're talking about life after the war. And it starts really with life directly after the war. And Light from the Darkness actually has a Shekianu in here. we took that out from this one because we were trying to make it more universal in terms of appeal. And so we took all the Hebrew out so that it didn't feel like it was a Jewish ritual, and we can talk about that separately. But the point of the Shekianu is that we want to recognize that we did survive. And even with everything that was lost, it is worth recognizing that we survived and we're still here, and that is worth celebrating. And that was what life was about. But then we have to step back and remember. And so memory allows us to step back to say, we have to remember to look at the faces of some of the people who were lost. This is another place that we have always been able to draw people in, this and the lost communities in terror, because we always ask people for names. And people will give us the names of their relatives or people they knew who were also lost, and we'll read those as well. And so that draws people in to some extent. But then after memory, we start to hit the lessons. This is where we're starting to get to the, what is it that we're supposed to be getting out of this? And awakening actually, let me actually go to awakening, because it's a kind of a nice spot. Because in some ways this started out from the Seder, when we were originally mirroring this on a Seder, is, well, what 4 questions would we ask? And this is the, bereft we weep. How do we mourn so many lost? Overwhelmed we whispered, I don't want to hear anymore. This page of awakening is, how do we respond to this? This is our chance to say, what is it we're supposed to do? Like Violet said, what do you do now? How do you deal with a story like that? And that's sort of our first step. And we lead this into the end of this. Hatred grows when we ignore it. And here's the beginning of our call to action, right? We will be vocal torchbearers of love. This is the beginning of our call to action. And then the next couple of sections are hitting that call to action. So really hope, how do we pull out the hope that we can do something, that we can create peace. And in this version, this is a change from the original, from Light from the Darkness. This section, the Never Again, in the original was in the middle. But when we put this one together, we realized it was really the call to action. And what this is, and I love this section, what does it mean when we say never again? We say never again, and we say that all the time, but it's a very amorphous thing. And so we decided that we were going to say, this is what we mean when we say never again shall we ignore the gathering shadows of hate. Never again shall we think that we are helpless to stop the coming of evil. These are specific things that we can think about how we interact with the world. And then the final call to action, justice, justice we shall pursue. This is a modification of a quote from Deuteronomy. I think it's Deuteronomy. Justice, justice you shall pursue. But this makes it personal. It's not justice, I'm told justice, justice you shall pursue. No. Justice, justice we shall pursue. We are going to do this. This is our universal lessons. And this is actually, I mean, let me stop the share here. It's kind of interesting because the original version was not like that. It didn't have any of these lessons. It was totally historical. It was telling the story. And when we took it to the publisher said, you need to abstract this a level. This is too literal. Give us some lessons. And we went, whoa, really? We can do that already? That's really exciting. And so we stepped back and we created we knew that at some point a Haggadah of the Holocaust would do that. We just didn't think we were ready for it yet. So, hearing we're ready for this was very exciting to us. And so we sort of jumped at the chance to do that.
And another thing, I just have to jump in here. With everything she just said, having the people realize this is personal, this is for you, but it gives them the tools to go forward. And that, I think, adds to the power of the never again section. We don't just send you out, we send you out armed.
Right. And the moment of witness question, there, and actually there's a couple of things in this section that ask you to say, what a hope I have for the future, and what could I do to actually make it happen? This is another thing that we changed in this from Light from the Darkness. When we get to hiding, what we do is we have them write down a hope and we hide it because it's not safe at that point to let your hopes be out in the open. But when we get to hope, we bring them back out because now it is safe, and we have them write on the back of that piece of paper, what can I do to make that hope or some other hope a reality? So again, we have a specific action that they are thinking about that they could go do.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing with us. So my last question before we'll open to our audience's questions is, how can somebody run the ritual? And is it appropriate for all ages? Could this be done in a school, or is it just for adults?
So the original ritual was actually written for middle schoolers, and because it was the Yom HaShoah program for the middle school. And as we were starting to do it, the first year we were starting to do it with the middle schoolers, and we had a couple of the adults in our congregation go, are you going to do a community version of this? Are you going to do one for the adults? And we said, sure. And this became a regular thing. We would do a community version for the adults every year. It is appropriate really for ages 13 and up. And it's not that you couldn't, in fact, it would be easy to make it age appropriate for 3rd to 5th graders. You need to take out a couple of things here and there, but it's really minor. But what we found when we tried to do that is that the 3rd to 5th graders don't have enough background for it to make sense. That if you think about a Passover Seder, you cannot go into the Seder expecting to learn the story of the Exodus. If you don't already know the story of the Exodus, the Seder makes no sense to you. That's not where you learn it. You learn it elsewhere, and you come to the Seder to celebrate it, to acknowledge it. Yes, we tell it, but we don't tell it in a way that really tells you the story. And that's the same here. We are telling it, but we're not telling it in a way that if you don't know the story already, it's going to make sense. So we found that the 3rd to 5th graders they didn't have enough background for it to make sense. But once you hit middle school, they do. And it works very nicely for middle schoolers and up. Now, when we did the community seders, we sometimes will have a parent say, can I bring my 8-year-old or my 10-year-old? And that's from my perspective, that's a sort of individual case. You talk to the parents and see, what you think that child can handle. In terms of how you do it, there are instructions in the back of the book. This book, Moment of Witness, was designed specifically with the intent of it being able to be done by a non-Jewish community without the involvement of Jews. And I've had some people be a little uncomfortable with that, and in the end, really, it doesn't tend to happen. It tends to happen as a collaboration between a Jewish community and a non-Jewish community. But I felt very strongly that it is necessary for the non-Jewish community to have ways of acknowledging, of commemorating this that aren't only coming from the Jewish community, because it's not, if it's only coming from the Jewish community, then they only have to worry about it when they're thinking about Jews. This is not, it is a story about Jews, but it is not just a Jewish story. It's a bigger story than that. It's a universal story with universal lessons that everybody should think of themselves as part of. And that was the intent behind Moment of Witness, was to give everybody a way into the story of the Holocaust that allowed them to see that it meant something in their lives and not just in the lives of the Jewish friends that they had or didn't have.
Thank you so much. So that concludes most of my questions. And I would like to let our audience ask as well. So if there are any questions from the audience.
Lynn, did we want to do a reading?
Oh,
Did we
yes.
read a section of it?
I apologize. Yes.
Yeah, so I actually would kind of like to read you guys this page. This is one of the things that is new in this book. This is a section in Terror, because in the original Light from the Darkness, we got to a section where, I mean, we were talking about the camps and the killing and the mass murder and all, and we wanted to acknowledge the lost communities. And in Light from the Darkness, we acknowledge the lost communities with a very Jewish ritual. We take a glass of wine and we dip out of it in recognition of a series of communities. We chant the names of communities, and we dip our wine. And to a Jewish community, this means a lot. There's a strong connection to history and ritual and all of that. To a non-Jewish community, this means nothing. There is no connection. So we needed something different. And this is Michael's genius. Because this is what we ended up with here. So excuse me while I look at the other screen and I read this. The lost communities. In their mission to obliterate civilizations, the Germans wiped out whole communities, not only their present, but also their history and their future. The sudden silence, this multi-generational emptiness, takes our breath away. These communities had existed since the time when Jews were enslaved by the Romans. They were refugees from the Inquisition. They endured the Crusades and survived the pogroms, but they are no more. And so this is a responsive reading. This is the, what do you do with the actual lost communities? A millennium of wisdom erased, a whole generation emptied of artists and writers, of scholars and teachers, an entire library of poems unwritten, music unimagined, knowledge unexplored. We mourn the centers of
living.
Vilna, Vienna, Prague. 2,000 years of civilization wiped away. A whole generation silenced of love and laughter, of charity and celebration. An entire society of families unborn, stories untold, synagogues unbuilt. We mourn the centers of life. Sarajevo, Salonika, Helm, Warsaw. A legacy of industry and craft extinguished. a whole generation bereft of artisans and builders, of experts and leaders, an entire economy of things unmade, science undiscovered, medicine unpracticed. We mourn the centers of progress, Kiev,
Yeah,
Kilche,
Kilche,
Frankfurt.
Frankfurt.
There are so many more, thousands of communities, millions of people, all silenced. Let these lights, we're lighting yard site candles or tea candles, shine as a symbol of life and love remembered. May they illuminate our memory and guide our future.
Thank you for that sharing. All right, I shall take myself off the spotlight.
So Erica had a question here. Who do you recommend, think is a group leader interested in exploring this book? So I think of this in a couple of ways. Really what seems to be, to happen is that you get Jewish communities, whether they're rabbis or education directors or the like, who want to do something that allows them to reach out to their broader community and do something interfaith. And this is a great thing for them to be able to do in an interfaith way. It's also a great thing for a church or an interfaith community. I mean, one of the ways this was developed was our congregation was part of an interfaith community. And there was a church, a very liberal, social action oriented church that was part of the interfaith community. And they asked us to come and teach some classes, and we created the original version of an interfaith commemoration for them. And that's what developed into Moment of Witness. So communities like that, either the church itself or the interfaith community that is, it was a church and a mosque and a synagogue and a Baha'i community and a Hindu community, and I think at some point maybe a Zoroastrian community, these interfaith communities to come together and have a commemoration. It's also a great thing for libraries. Violet has done a program at the Flower Mound Library in Texas, where the congregation Colomia is. I think this is like our 4th or 5th year doing
Fourth year.
our 4th year doing
Fourth
a
year.
commemoration. Like that, or a commemoration using this text or version of this text for them. So libraries and other community groups, this is a great program for them. Schools too. It's a good program for a secular school where you don't want it to feel religious. I mean, one of the things we did, and I had some people a little, like I said, a little uncomfortable with this, but we took out all the brachot. We took out all the Hebrew. We didn't take out all the Jewish ritual. There, we held on to the candle lighting, and we don't say Kaddish, but we say something. In fact, I want to call out Jennifer Zunikov, who is in this audience somewhere, who is our storyteller, our storytelling director, but and our original poet in residence. And what we use instead of the Kaddish is actually a piece of a poem of hers. But there's nothing in it that is religious. There are quotes from religious leaders, but not any, not only those, there are quotes from secular leaders as well. So it is something that you can do in a completely secular setting. The other thing, I've never seen this done, but I would love to. I think this would make a great workshop on social justice, where you go through sort of a section at a time and read the section and then spend some time talking about the moment of witness question, and go through pieces of it, but really focus on these moment of witness questions. And I think that would be a really neat way to use this. Like I said, I haven't seen it done, but I would love to see it done.
Deborah,
Violet,
there's another question in the chat from Judith.
Hmm.
If either of you would like to respond.
What is the question?
How has
question-
the response been from people of color?
Oh.
So we had in the when we did our beta testing, we had 3 tests. The third was a test with the moment of witness questions, at which we had a couple of members of the Black community who said they felt like this was really making the connections that they had been missing. Beyond that, I don't, I mean, we have, yeah, I don't really have an answer to that because I haven't really seen it yet.
Well,
Violet?
yes, having done the ritual at the library in Flower Mound, afterwards, there were people in the audience that I could see were people of color, and they were able to connect with it. It affected them as it affected everyone that was in the audience. So I feel like this ritual is across the color spectrum. Everyone can relate to it.
Want to bounce that to Erica. Erica, have you seen, do you have an answer to that at all?
So I can't say, forgive me for not coming online video wise. So hope everyone can hear me. I have not seen any like sort of direct tests, say from, for example, my congregation has a pulpit exchange with a Baptist church. So I haven't seen anything like that where this has specifically been brought there. But I do recall, because actually I was at the second test beta where the question came up. I know exactly who you're talking about because I remember that was, you were still in development. I think the questions, and I'm glad to hear you got that feedback, have introduced and I hesitate to use the word universality because I never want something so generalized that it has no specific points, but I think it has given people points of entry and access. It's given people a way to think about where they are and where their experience can be a reference point. And so I think one of the challenges to us at Teach the Shoah might be to actively seek congregations and communities and say, you know, if this is something that would fit in your curriculum or in your observances, you know, would you welcome that? Because I think also we are in a situation where a lot of people think this doesn't apply to them. And that's a conversation. The reason that moment of witness needs to exist is it may not be your specific story that where it started, but there is something in this story for all of us to take from, whether to ourselves personally or to our own communities. So I think I take that question both as a thought process, you know, sharing what we know, but also as an action point for us to really think about how we can be more proactive in that. So thank you, Judith, for that question.
Thank you, Erica.
Yeah, thank you, Erica. So another question in the chat, is the book set up so that anyone can read and use it and lead a group without additional training? And the answer is yes. There's 2 things that are really useful there. One is there's an introduction, which really gives you a sense of what it is that we're trying to do. And the other is this page. We have a leader's guide that tells you exactly what we're trying to do and how to do it, and gives you some suggestions of other things that you can add to it. So yes, it's designed that you don't need us. And actually, this isn't about moment of witness, but I had a really funny experience about Light from the Darkness, where a friend of mine was watching her 8th grader participate in an online program from her her religious school, commemorating the Holocaust. And they start reading, and my friend is like, this sounds really familiar. And then they bring up the cover page, and it's Light from the Darkness. That they're randomly doing Light from the Darkness. They had no knowledge that there were any connections within the community to us. They just had found or had a copy of the book and decided they wanted to do it. So hopefully that will happen with Moment of Witness too, and it should be totally possible. It is meant to be set up so that you don't need any help to do it.
It's very user-friendly.
Yeah.
So we're coming close to the end of the hour. I'd like to thank both Deborah and Violet for writing the book, writing the ritual. If you would like to join Teach the Shoah at this year's International Holocaust Remembrance Moment of Witness, it will take place on Thursday, the 23rd of January at 8 p.m. Eastern on Zoom.
Lynn, let's highlight that. We do this ritual, this program every year around this time. That for the past 3 or 4 years,
4 years.
we have done an online version of Moment of Witness for the community from Teach the Shoah. And one of the things that we didn't talk about is that we also, those of you who know us, know that we're all about storytelling, not just in the way that we do it in this book, but in sort of more direct ways of telling people's stories, and we interweave those stories into the ritual. Jennifer calls this white fire, that to go along with the black fire of the text that's on the page. So we will be interweaving, I don't know if she's still here, but Jessica Silverman and Lynn Feldman, or Lynn, who you've been hearing from, will be interweaving the story of Jessica's grandparents and her aunt and uncle into the Moment of Witness that we're holding this year. So please join us. If you think this is interesting and exciting, come see it in action, because there's nothing quite like seeing something like this in action. I mean, I can read it to you all day long, but there's nothing quite like seeing it in action. So join us. It's the 23rd. That's a week from Thursday at 8 o'clock.
Yes, Deborah, I'm still here. It's Jessica. And yes, we're very excited. And Lynn and I are quite prepared. And we're excited to bring this very special program to everyone. So we hope to see you all there.
Yes.
Erica
and
has her hand raised.
Yes, Erica.
But Deborah, did you want to finish your thoughts on that? Because my comment might segue off.
No, I was going to comment on the next comments. That was my thoughts on that.
Okay, well then I just want to say that I would be a very poor board member if I did not say that the Moment of Witness on the 23rd is actually one of 4 events that we are very excited about in January. Actually 5, if you want to count this one. We have launched a publication. Kudos to Deborah and Violet, and of course to Michael. We are hosting the Moment of Witness on the 23rd. We are hosting our public lecture on the 30th. And we are kicking off our annual donation drive. However, the thing I really want to draw out is from International Holocaust Remembrance Day through Yom HaShoah 2025, in honor of the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, which is going to be on the 27th of January, which is why it's International Holocaust Remembrance Day. We are kicking off 80 for 80, which is going to be a story a day, approximately 2 to 3 minutes in length, on various social media platforms and on our website. So I just want to say that there are so many ways to engage with Teach the Shoah this coming month and this coming quarter, in ways that are accessible and that are ways to introduce what we do. So I just want to make sure I do my job as a board member and as a supporter to say, we have a book, we have programs, we have social media, and Teach the Showa has a lot to share this coming year and a lot that we've done. So please, 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 whether you want the full experience of one of the rituals or the lectures, or you want to take it in a bite-sized way and share it with the people in your community, this is the month to do that. So please check out our events calendar and pay attention to your emails.
And if you
Thank you,
happen,
Erica.
if you happen to be in North Texas, in Flower Mound, I will be presenting the ritual at the Flower Mound Library. So I would love to
On
meet
the
you in person.
27th, correct?
On the 27th
6
at
p.m.
6 o'clock. Yes.
At 6 o'clock. On the
Yes.
27th at 6 p.m., go to the Flower Mound Library and you get to see it.
Yes.
Lynn put in the chat where you can purchase the book. There is not currently an electronic version. It's only in paperback at the moment.
We have both the registration for Moment of Witness ritual with us and the book up on the chat. Deborah, yes, only 15 copies left, but there's more coming. No worries.
It's print on demand, so there will always be copies. So don't worry about there only being 15 copies. Just there will always be copies.
So, Deborah, to lead us out of this evening, could you bring up again the call for action and let's read it all together?
All the whole
Never again.
never again.
Yes, please. Yes, ma'am.
Hang on. My computer is not behaving here. All right. Share.
So, to our audience, if this is your first time witnessing a moment of witness, once Deborah finishes the never again sentence, we all say together out loud, never again.
Through the windows of our broken history, we have seen bits of ourselves in all these stories, the victims and the bystanders, in the perpetrators and in the rescuers. As we recall the Holocaust, we resolve to follow the strength and courage of those who stood fast for righteousness. We resolve to learn so that no people shall ever suffer such a fate again. We say, never again. Never again shall we ignore the gathering shadows of hate.
Never
again.
Never again shall we stay silent at the preaching of malice.
Never again.
Never again shall we excuse those who hate.
Never
again.
As long as poverty,
justice, and gross inequality persist in our
world, none of us
can truly rest.
Never again.
Never again.
Never again shall we stand and watch while people are mistreated.
Never again.
Never again shall we allow groups of people to be separated and made unequal.
Never again.
Never again shall we watch a community plant the seeds of hate and do nothing.
Never
again.
If your eyes be
turned
toward justice,
choose
for your
neighbor
that which you
choose for yourself.
Never again.
Never again shall we think we are helpless to stop the coming of evil.
Never again.
Never again.
Never again shall we forget our own strength.
Never again.
Never again shall we allow hatred to go unanswered.
Never again.
I raise up my voice, not so that I can shout, but so that those out of voice
be
heard.
Always.
Let us raise our voice for those who cannot. As it is written, justice, justice, who shall pursue. So read this with me. Never again will we turn our faces from the cry for help. The need is here.
The need is now.
justice.
justice, justice.
We
shall
pursue.
pursue. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening or rest of the day, depending on where you are. And we hope to see you at all of our events this month.